Welcome back to another Waking Nightmare story. Thank you guys so much for the support on the last few videos. I really appreciate it. Now, let's start tonight's story. I'd been watching people sleep for 6 years by the time any of this started. That's the job. Sleep technician at Mayo Clinic, Rochester facility, night shift. I'd sit in a monitoring room the size of a walk-in closet and watch brainwaves scroll across a screen while whoever was in the next room tried to get some rest with about 30 electrodes stuck to their scalp. Not glamorous, I know that. The setup is basically this. You've got your EEG leads for brain activity, a couple of sensors for eye movement, a few more for muscle tone, pulse ox on the finger, belts across the chest and abdomen to catch breathing effort. Run all that through a system, and what you get is a picture of what the brain's doing while the rest of the person checks out for the night. Sleep isn't just unconsciousness. That's what most people get wrong about it. It's a whole architecture. You've got your light stages, N1 and N2, where you drift and settle. Then N3, slow wave sleep, deep and quiet. Then REM, where the brain lights up and the eyes go and the body goes mostly limp. And the dreams happen. Cycle repeats every 90 minutes or so, all night. I could look at a readout and tell you exactly where someone was in their cycle just from the wave shape. 6 years of that, you get a feel for it. Most nights were quiet, that's the honest answer. Someone would drift off around 11. I'd log the staging every 30 seconds. Drink my bad coffee from the break room, maybe read something. I kept a beat-up paperback in my coat pocket most shifts. The overnight hours have a texture to them when nothing's happening. Not boring exactly, just still. I got used to it, figured I understood the limits of what the job was. Person goes to sleep, brain does its thing. I write it down, they wake up, they go home. That was the whole deal. I didn't think much about what happened on the other side of the monitoring, the experience side, what the brain was actually doing with all those cycles. That wasn't really my department. I watched the data was enough. So that Tuesday morning in March, when Christina called me into her office before I'd even taken my coat off, I wasn't expecting anything unusual. Christina Juarez, clinical director, ran a tight operation. Sharp, always composed. The kind of person who made you feel slightly underprepared just by being in the same room. Wire-rimmed glasses, low bun, the white coat with her badge clipped just so. She gestured at the chair across from her desk, and I sat down. "Close the door," she said. I closed it. She had a folder open in front of her, and she didn't look up from it right away. I waited. There was a framed photo of the Rochester skyline on the wall behind her, and a small cactus on the windowsill that I was pretty sure was fake. "You're familiar with nightmare disorder?" she said. Not really a question. "Sure," I said. "Recurrent REM disruption, elevated amygdala response. The patient wakes distressed, can't always reorient." She nodded. "Merck has developed a compound, Clearwater, phase 3. The mechanism targets amygdala suppression during REM specifically. The goal is to reduce threat processing activity without disturbing the sleep stage itself." She slid a one-page summary across the desk toward me. "They've contracted with us for the trial." I picked up the paper, skimmed it. 12 participants. 5 consecutive nights in the sleep lab. Progressively increasing doses across the trial period. Standard stuff on the surface. Document any anomalies, submit nightly reports. Flag anything outside normal parameters. "You'd monitor overnight," Christina said. "The same as you've already doing, just with structured documentation protocol on top of it." "How many nights total?" I asked. 5 per participant, but the cohort runs simultaneously, all 12 in-house at once. That was a bigger monitoring load than usual. I mentioned that. "You'll have support staff for prep and wake procedures. The overnight monitoring is yours." She took her glasses off and set them on the folder. The compensation reflects the additional responsibility. Merck is covering a supplemental rate on top of your base for the trial duration. She told me the number. It was generous. That's the word I keep coming back to. Generous enough that I didn't ask a lot of follow-up questions, which in retrospect was not my best moment. I told her I was in. She handed me the full protocol packet, which was about 40 pages, and told me to review it before the trial started the following Monday. I said I would. I tucked it under my arm and walked back out to the monitoring room and set it on the desk next to my coffee and didn't open it. I meant to. I kept thinking I'd get to it over the weekend. I didn't really get to it. I told myself it was routine monitoring work. Different compound, same job. Watch the waves, log the staging, flag anything weird. I'd done it 100 times. I figured I knew what sleep looked like. That was probably my first mistake. The first 3 nights were fine. That's the thing. They were totally fine. 12 participants, all combat veterans or chronic nightmare cases, which is a specific kind of person. Not dramatic about it, just tired in a way that sits in the face. They came in around 9 each night, did their prep with the support staff, and were in bed by 10:30. I'd get my readings, log my staging, drink my coffee. The monitoring station had 2 rows of screens, 6 on top, 6 on the bottom. I'd set them up in a grid and just watch. That was the whole job. And Clearwater was doing exactly what Christina said it would do. Normal REM looks a certain way. The brain lights up, you get that mixed frequency activity, low voltage, fast. And in nightmare disorder patients, you get those theta bursts layered in, 4 to 8 hertz, sharp and repetitive. That's the amygdala doing its thing, threat processing, the brain running its bad movie over and over, while the body's stuck in place. None of that happened. Nights 1, 2, 3. Every subject hit REM on schedule, and the theta bursts just weren't there. The waves were smooth, flat in the right way, active in the right way. They were sleeping and not dreaming. Or at least not dreaming in the way that woke them up screaming. The data looked clean. I kept logging while drinking my coffee. Around 3 in the morning on night 2, I finished my paperback, which was a used copy of Michael Connelly novel I'd bought at the half-price books on Broadway. I had nothing to read after that, so I just watched the screens. That's how quiet it was. Night 4, they bumped the dosages to therapeutic levels. Christina had mentioned this during a brief check-in on day 2. Something about how the first 3 nights were titration, and night 4 was when the compound reached its intended concentration. I wrote that down. I didn't think much about it. I should have thought about it. I was eating a granola bar, the kind with too much honey that sticks to your back teeth, when Subject 7's readings changed. 2:47 a.m. I remember because I'd just logged the 2:45 staging and set the pen down. Rowan Dean had been in N2 for about 20 minutes, drifting toward REM at a normal pace. Then he hit REM, and the wave pattern that came up on his screen was nothing I'd seen before. Not in 6 years, not in any textbooks I'd skimmed in grad school. The whole cortex fired at once. Not a burst, not a spike. Everything synchronized, like every region decided to do the same thing at exactly the same time. The amplitude was high. The frequency was consistent. It looked almost orderly, which was the part that bugged me. Seizure activity is chaotic. This wasn't chaotic. I leaned in and looked at it for a few seconds. Figured maybe a lead had come loose, artifact on the recording. That happens. I checked his impedance values, all clean. The leads were fine. I looked at the other screens. My stomach did a thing I don't have a good word for. Dropped maybe, went somewhere. All 12 subjects were in REM at the same time. That alone was unusual. Sleep cycling is not synchronized across different people. Everyone is on their own schedule, always. But all 12 of them had it hit REM within what looked like the same 2-minute window. And all 12 screens showed the same pattern. The exact same pattern. Same amplitude, same frequency, same bilateral symmetry across the cortex. I went down the row twice to make sure I wasn't mixing up the feeds. I wasn't. Subject 1 through Subject 12, 2 rows of 6 screens, all of them showing me something that shouldn't exist. I reached for the phone to call Christina. Her number was on the laminated sheet taped on the side of the desk. I'd never had to use it before. I had my hand on the receiver when I glanced back at the screens. Rowan Dean's eyes were open. Not at the ceiling, not at nothing. The way people's eyes sometimes drift open during light sleep. Glassy, unfocused, aimed at something that isn't there. He was looking at the lens, straight at it, the kind of focus that takes effort. I had seen eyes open REM before. It's rare, but it happens. Usually the eyes are half-masked, rolling a little, tracking nothing. That's normal. What Dean was doing wasn't that. He wasn't tracking anything. He was tracking the camera. I set the phone back down. I don't know why. Reflex maybe. His vitals were fine. Oxygen saturation 96. Heart rate slow and even. The EEG was still running the same locked-in pattern. High amplitude, bilateral, every part of the cortex doing the same thing at the same time. According to every number on the screen, Rowan Dean was in deep REM sleep. His body said otherwise. Then screen 3 moved. Debbie Richards, subject 3. She was on her side when I looked. Hair spread across the pillow, and then she wasn't on her side anymore. She was on her backside. Eyes open, same thing. Not glazed, not wandering. Aimed at the lens just like Dean. I pulled up screen 9 before I even thought to. Bentley Maldonado. His eyes were already open when I got there. I sat back in my chair and looked at all 12 screens. 30 seconds maybe, could have been less. One by one, and then all at once. I can't remember exactly how it went in what order because I stopped tracking order at some point. What I remember is that at some point I was looking at 12 screens and 12 people were sitting upright in 12 beds and 12 sets of eyes were pointed at 12 cameras. Completely still, completely upright, like someone had pressed a button. In REM sleep, your body is paralyzed. That is the whole mechanism. Your brainstem cuts motor signals to your muscles so you don't act out of your dreams. The only thing that keeps moving are your eyes and your diaphragm, because those run on different pathways. That's textbook first semester. That's the thing everyone learns and then doesn't think about again because it's just how it works. These 12 people were sitting upright in REM sleep. That is not a thing. That's not a malfunction I'd seen before or a variant I'd read about. That's just not a thing that happens. I was still processing that when Dean moved again. He stood up, clean, one motion. Feet on the floor upright, no fumbling, no adjustment. The way you stand up when you've been awake for an hour and you're just getting up because you decided to. It felt almost mechanical, if that's the right word for it. I keep coming back to that. He wasn't stiff. That's not really the right word exactly. There was no wasted motion. He walked to the door. I watched all 12 screens. All 12 subjects stood up. Same motion, same timing. Debbie Richards, who was 5'4" and 115 pounds and usually moved like she was trying not to bother anyone, stood up like a soldier. Bentley stood. The others stood. All 12 people on their feet moving toward their door at the same time. I hit the intercom. Dean's room first. Dean? My voice came out steady, which surprised me. Dean, can you hear me? He didn't stop. Didn't look up at the speaker. Didn't slow down. His eyes were still on the camera. He reached the door and his hands went to the handle and he just worked it. Like he'd done it 100 times. I said his name again. Nothing. The doors were locked. That was in the protocol, one of the parts I'd actually read. Participant room doors locked from 11 p.m. until 6 a.m. Keypad entry. Override from the front desk. Standard containment for a monitored sleep environment. I thought it was a little excessive when I read it. I wasn't thinking that anymore. I heard the click. Dean's door. Then another one. Then two more, almost at the same time. I stopped counting after that because they kept coming and it didn't matter. All 12 doors. All 12 clicks. One right after another like something down the line. I got up and I locked my door. The bolt was a simple thing, just a thumb turn. And I turned it and stood there for a second with my hand still on it. Then I picked up the phone and called Christina. It rang twice. Cole? She sounded like she'd been awake. Maybe she had been. They're up, I said. My voice cracked on the second word. All 12 of them. They're up and their doors just open and I don't know what's happening right now. Christina said to stay put. I had the phone pressed hard against my ear and she was talking fast. Already mid-sentence when I caught up. Shared parasomnia event, she said. Medication induced. Probably some kind of synchronized REM disruption. She'd seen case literature on group sleep disturbances in controlled environments. Security was already called. Don't open that door, she said. I wasn't going to, I said. I stood there with the phone still in my hand and looked at my door. There was a narrow window in it, maybe 8 inches wide, reinforced glass with wire mesh inside it. Interior door for a monitoring station. I never thought much about it before that night. I thought about it now. They were already in the hallway. I don't know exactly when they got there. Sometime in the 30 seconds it took me to hang up and turn around. All 12 of them, standing in a semicircle directly in front of my door, facing the window, perfectly still and spaced, like someone had measured the gaps between them. Rowan Dean was at the center. They were all in their sleep clothes. Hospital issue stuff, light gray, loose fitting. Debbie Richards was in the back left. Bentley was 2 spots from Dean on the right. All 12 of them just standing there staring at the window. At me. I backed up 1 step. That was it. Dean raised his right hand and pressed his palm flat against the glass. Slow and deliberate. Like he'd decided to do it a long time ago and was finally getting around to it. Then the one to his left did the same thing. Then the next one, down the line both directions. All 12 palms flat against the door window and the wall on either side of it. Even the ones who couldn't reach the glass pressed their hands against the drywall at the same height, the same angle, their mouths opened. No sound came through. The door was solid, and the walls were thick. I couldn't hear a thing, but I could see their lips moving. All 12 at the same time. The same shape, the same rhythm. My name. They were saying my name. Cole. I hadn't told any of them my name. That's not part of the intake process. They get staff badge numbers, not names. I'd logged their data for 4 nights and never introduced myself. I'd never spoken to Dean except through an intercom 2 minutes ago. And all I said was his name, not mine. The lights dipped, just once, maybe half a second. The monitors behind me made a low hum that they'd never made before. I turned around. The 12 readouts on the screen weren't 12 readouts anymore. They were 1. Same amplitude, same frequency, perfectly layered, perfectly overlapping. I'd spent 6 years learning to read EEG patterns, and I'd never seen anything like this. There's 12 separate brains producing 1 signal. I stood there and I thought, the drugs didn't stop the nightmares. It connected them. I have no idea how long I stood with my back to the door before I heard Dean's hand move. A dragging sound, slow. I turned back around and he was writing on the glass with 1 finger, pressing hard, writing backward. The letters were forming left to right from his side, right to left from mine, so I could read them straight through. "We know you're here." The glass under his palm had a crack in it, small, radial, spreading from the center of his handprint like a spiderweb. I looked at the other hands still pressing to the glass and the wall and realized the cracks were there too. All 12 of them with the same pattern and same size. That part scared me a little. Then the window gave. Not all at once. It sagged inward along the crack lines first, and I had maybe 2 seconds before it broke through in a chunk and Dean's hand came through with it. He wasn't reaching for me. He was just still moving forward. Same pace, like the wall wasn't a factor. Wayne and Casey hit the hallway at a run from the south end. I heard Wayne's radio before I saw him. They both had their hands up and were already calling out commands. Routine stuff. Stop, get down, hands. And the 12 subjects ignored all of it completely. Didn't look at them. Didn't slow down. They moved together. That's the part that's hard to explain. When Wayne grabbed the guy nearest the door and pulled him sideways, the other 11 shifted at the same time. Like they felt it. Like they'd redistributed. Casey got an arm around Richards and she fought back hard. Way harder than a 115-pound woman probably should. And 2 others turned toward him at the exact same moment without looking at him first. I went for Dean. I know that's not what I was supposed to do, but he was halfway through the door and he was the one I'd been watching for 4 nights. And I guess I just went. I got his arm, and he turned toward me, and his eyes were still open, still doing that thing where they were aimed at something I couldn't see. And I pulled him down. Wayne got his other side. We got him to the floor, and he kept moving, kept pushing, not frantic, just steady and mechanical, like he was working through a checklist. I grabbed for the EEG leads on his scalp, got 2 of them, and pulled. His eyes closed, just like that. 1 second he was pushing against us, and the next he went completely slack, and Wayne almost dropped him. I looked up and around the room, and the other 11 were doing the same thing, going down one after another. Some of them already on the floor, a couple still standing but swaying. Casey had his hands on Maldonado's shoulders, and Maldonado just sat down like someone had turned him off. The monitors were back to 12 separate signals. Dean woke up about 20 minutes later, sitting on the floor with his back against the wall. He looked at me, then at Wayne, then around the room. "What happened?" he said, flat, not really a question. "You were sleepwalking," I said. I don't know what else to say. He nodded like that made sense, looked at his hands. There were small cuts on his palm from the glass, and he looked at them for a second, then set his hands back down. He didn't remember anything. None of them did. I asked Richards later, not officially, just in passing, and she said that the last thing she remembered was lying down in bed, and then she was sitting on the floor with a headache. Christina terminated the trial that morning, didn't say much about it, just sent a message to all staff that the Clearwater study was concluded, effective immediately. All participants to be released with follow-up appointments scheduled. All materials to be secured pending review. Brian Harris and Sadie Mitchell showed up at 9 a.m. I don't know when they left to get there that fast. Harris was in a dark suit, the kind that probably cost more than my car. Sadie had a rolling carry-on and a leather portfolio, and she went straight to the data terminal without saying hello to anyone. They were in Christina's office for 40 minutes. Then they came out, and Harris asked to speak with me specifically. We sat in a small conference room near the break room. Harris had a folder. Sadie had a pen and a legal pad. The folder had my name typed on the tab, which I thought was a little aggressive. Harris did most of the talking. He used words like proprietary data and ongoing clinical review and protocol for phase terminations. He slid a document across the table, several pages, dense text, and a yellow sticky note with an arrow pointing to the signature line. The number on the last page was more than I made in a year. I'm not great at reading legal documents under pressure. I read the first paragraph and the last paragraph, and I signed it. Sadie collected the pen and the document without making eye contact. Harris closed the folder. "We appreciate your professionalism," he said. I drove home and sat in my car in the parking lot of my apartment building for a while, then I went inside and went to bed. 3 weeks later, I woke up at 2:47 a.m. I know the time because I checked my phone the second I registered that I was standing up. I was in my bedroom, facing the window. The room was dark, and the glass was doing that thing at night where it goes mostly reflective, and I was standing there looking at myself. I didn't remember getting up. My phone was in my hand. I looked down at it. There was an app on the screen I didn't recognize. White background, a thin blue wave moving across it, a small readout in the corner. Sleep tracking, the kind that monitors movement and sound and supposedly maps your sleep stages. I never downloaded it. I don't use sleeping track apps. I get enough of that at work. The wave on the screen was the pattern from that night. High amplitude, bilateral symmetry. I recognized it immediately. I'd stared at it for 20 minutes across 12 screens. I looked back up at the window. There were 12 of them standing behind me in that reflection. In my bedroom. I didn't turn around. I already knew if I turned around the room would be empty. I don't know how I knew that. I just did. Debbie Richards was in the back left. Maldonado was on the right. Rowan Dean was at the center, directly behind my shoulder. And he was the only one smiling. I stood there looking at the reflection, and I understood something that I really didn't want to understand. The trial was over. The data was confiscated. I'd signed the document and taken the money, and none of it had mattered at all. Whatever Clearwater had made wasn't in that building anymore. It was in me now, too.